There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play? They're here.
Welcome to the Horror Cut.
Hi guys, Gary here from the Horror Cut. I'm just bringing you another episode from when I was on Choose Film. This time it's on Alien 3 and we had actor Gordon Millar on. It's one of his favourite films, so he was really excited to come on the podcast and talk about it. It was a pleasure having Gordon on, and of course this one was again with Ashley Sutherland. Ashley hadn't seen the film before as well, so it was interesting to have someone watching it for the first time and having someone on that knows it kind of inside out. So enjoy. Me and Stephen will be recording new episodes next Sunday, and we can't wait for you to give them a listen. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Ashley.
And I'm Gary.
And welcome to episode 6 of Choose Film, a real retrospective podcast, where we take a deep dive into a random film chosen by our guest host. And today we are joined by the wonderful Gordon J Millar, who has decided that this episode we will be taking a look at the film Alien 3. Thank you so much for joining us, Gordon. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi guys, hi Ashley, hi Gary.
Hi.
Thanks so much for inviting me along to this. I've listened to your previous podcasts and I'm really intrigued by it. It's lovely to meet you two, and Gary, we've met before.
Yeah.
And I've been following you guys' progress online. It's great to see you guys out there just doing stuff. And I think we need to, in the current climate, just keep going and help each other along. So I was really honoured to be invited along to this podcast today. So thanks, guys. And we're all film fans. And I thought it was a real challenge when Gary got in touch, where we're going to go with this, because if we're honest, people always ask you, what's your favourite film, what's your top 10, whatever, and it's a really hard thing to do. So when you get a theme, and the theme was the first feature film, that kind of narrowed it down. So I started thinking, because I've been around for a wee while, who's a sort of first-time director? But I guess something kind of sparked that recently there's been quite a lot of controversy around Star Wars, because Star Wars is kind of sacred to fans. And so when you put prequels out and then recently sequels out, sometimes if the fans aren't happy, there's a huge backlash. And we've certainly witnessed that with Star Wars, especially Last Jedi. We've seen that it's very, very contentious, which is kind of an interesting thing. There's a kind of fan ownership thing goes on. And the first time I experienced that was in the early 90s when I was an art student. And when a film called Alien 3 came along, and because of the success of the first two films, which were critically acclaimed and huge box office smashes, and just look who's involved in these films, there was huge anticipation, that's quite difficult to say, and expectation for Alien 3. Now remember, we had no internet, no mobile phones, we just had chat and picking up snippets in magazines and stuff, and there was chat about Alien 3 coming. So when it finally arrived, I went to see it in 1992 in the cinema, wide-eyed, buzzing, because loved the first two films. And it was interesting. I personally really enjoyed it. I did. But afterwards, the chat, I was kind of surprised at the reaction against it. And because of that, I thought it's going to be an interesting film to talk about. But also, I'm not sure if you've seen the film before.
No, I've not. And I've not seen Alien or Aliens.
Well, to me, that's really exciting, and it's a wonderful thing about films, and you'll find that as you go through life. You see a film for the first time at a certain stage in your life, where you're at with your work, relationships, whatever, and when you move on, the film doesn't. So when you revisit it when you're older, it's fascinating to see, and I think it's wonderful that you've not seen this before, so you'll have a completely fresh perspective, and I'm really excited to hear your view of it. And I know, Gary, you've seen a lot of films and you're an accomplished filmmaker yourself, so you'll have your ideas about this. But I'd love to hear a different generation viewing it, because films are immortal, so we can jump back in and watch them again with a fresh perspective. So that's kind of why I sort of chose this film.
Can I just ask, when you watched it most recently, did you watch the original theatrical cut, or did you watch well, it's really the director's cut, but even the director doesn't want to call it a director's cut, so it's called the assembly cut?
I did. Do you know, I couldn't get hold of the assembly cut, and I mean, we'll chat through this, but I think the assembly cut's incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And I think the theatrical cut, I can understand some of the fan backlash, and I can understand the studio side, so I can sit in the fence a wee bit. I can see both sides. So actually, I found the clips on YouTube from the assembly cut, which was helpful. You kind of have to edit it in your own brain. But I watched the theatrical release, which is the one that kind of sparked and ignited all that controversy back in 1992.
Yeah. So I watched the assembly and you watched the theatrical, and I think Ashley watched the theatrical as well.
Yeah.
So before we get into the points anyway, maybe we should state what the differences are. But let's hear what Ashley thought of the film before we do that.
So this was not my usual type of film that I would go for. I didn't really connect with it a lot, but actually watching it and having to find points about it made me view it in a different way as opposed to just sitting watching an alien sort of sci-fi film. So I did find parts of it really interesting, and I liked certain parts. I like to hone in on certain parts, but it's definitely a sort of style that I didn't really connect with. So yes, shall we give our ratings of the film? So my rating is a very halfway 5 out of 10 for this one, which I think will be a little bit different to some of you guys' rating.
Okay, I'm going to tell you my rating from 1992, 7 out of 10, all those years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say that based on the first two Aliens, I would give 10 out of 10. Absolutely, Alien and Aliens, 10 out of 10. So based on that. However, I've changed my rating, and I can save it for later if you like, but I've changed my rating on Alien 3 after revisiting it this weekend.
No, I would tell us now, and then we'll see if that changes again by the end of the episode.
Okay. Ashley's is a very, very honest review, and that reflects most people who have seen it, so I totally understand it, totally get it. But actually, my rating is now 8 out of 10. After reading the background, after seeing how this young director survived through development hell and actually got something out there, and actually just looking at the aesthetic of the film, which I think is kind of beautiful in a weird, bleak sort of way. It's really powerful from a filmmaking point of view. So revisiting it and just bearing in mind there's some massive flaws in it, which we'll go into chat about, my rating's gone from 7 out of 10 from the original theatrical release in 1992 to all these years later, it's up to 8 out of 10.
I will go for 7.9. It's not to me it's not quite an 8, because there's so many films that I love that is like an 8 out of 10, but I've never once put this film on and not enjoyed it. When I go to start the Alien franchise, which is actually really funny as well, Gordon, because I just watched the first two like a few weeks ago, but now I'm going to have to go and watch Alien Resurrection, Alien vs Predator now. I never quite go, Alien 3. I'm still quite excited to watch that next one. Alien Resurrection is a different kettle of fish all in, and maybe we can quickly chat about that at the end. But yeah, so 7.9 for me on that.
I have to say as well, I'm really bad for hearing the name of a film and instantly going Rotten Tomatoes and then looking at Alien and Aliens, which was like 97%, and then Alien 3 was 43%, if I'm right. And I think I was like, oh, what am I going to watch here? So I think I shouldn't have done that, and I need to get out of that habit.
Well, we quickly as well, just quickly get out there some of the terminology of the different alien creatures and things like that, just for MD listening who maybe isn't quite a fan of it. So the main alien in it is a xenomorph, which is the big one. So if we use that word, that's what it is. The face hugger is the wee spider looking one that gives you creeps, and the chest buster is when it first pops out of whatever the living creature is. So just quickly, we can go just name off some of the differences between the assembly cut and the theatrical cut. So the first one being there was an extended opening of when they're like heaving her shipwreck in off out the water. The characters, the prisoners, are actually given a lot more screen time, so they're not quite red shirts, so to speak, to use Star Trek terminology. In the theatrical cut, the chestburster comes out a dog, and in the assembly cut, it's an ox. So,
that makes sense with some of the stuff I was reading. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And Crazy Gollock, I don't know if he was given actually a name in the theatrical cut, they trap the alien and he lets it back out because he thinks it's some sort of mythical creature. And then there's the chestburster scene at the end. So as Sigourney Weaver, Ellen Ripley decides to throw herself into the furnace, in the theatrical cut, the alien pops out of her, but in the assembly cut, it's not. And it's more of a religious ending. There's probably more, but I think those are the main bullet points of the differences in that.
Interesting. I need to go and watch that cut now as well. We've not even got started.
It is a better film, the theatrical cut. The assembly cut.
Mm-hmm. So just for our listeners who might not have seen this film or want a little recap, here is a little synopsis of the film. So, Ellen Ripley is the only survivor when she crash lands on a bleak wasteland inhabited by former inmates of the planet's maximum security prison. Once again, Ripley must face the alien as it hunts down the prisoners and guards. Without weapons or modern technology of any kind, Ripley leads the men into battle against the terrifying creature. So, let's get into it.
This is Rumour Control, here are the facts. A 337 model EEV crash landed here on the morning watch. There was one survivor, 2 dead, and a droid that was hopelessly smashed beyond repair. The survivor is a woman. We've 25 prisoners in this facility. All scum. Just because they've taken on religion doesn't make them any less dangerous. Let me see if I have this correct, Lieutenant. It's an 8-foot creature of some kind with acid for blood, and it arrived on your spaceship. It kills on sight and is generally unpleasant.
When they first heard about this thing, it was crew expendable. The next time they sent in Marines, they were expendable too. What makes you think they're gonna care about a bunch of lifers who found God at the ass end of space?
So, as always, we're going to go round in a circle, picking our 3 positive points. So my first positive point is actually Clement and Ripley's relationship. I thought it was beautiful, and it was so needed in a film like this. It was so sincere and real amongst such a bizarre setting and bizarre storyline. It just felt so real, and it felt something that I could connect to. And the first instance that I saw that was when they're talking together. I think it's in the kind of main part of the prison, and there's no one else around, and he's just kind of speaking about it's the history of the prison, talking about the history of the prison, and there's a little bit of sarcasm, and it's not overdone at all, and it's just a really beautiful conversation, and you see the connection there, which really, really feeds well into later on when, spoiler, he is killed by the alien, and the sort of hurt there. And I really, really enjoyed that. I just thought it was a beautiful relationship and set up really well as well, because I didn't expect it from their first meeting.
Yeah, and I think he's got such an interesting backstory as well, which isn't, the information on that backstory isn't given to us right away. Mm-hmm. So you know there's something not quite right, the way the other prisoners and the guy that runs the prison, I can't remember his name in it. Andrews
is the guy that runs it,
yeah. Him and Clemens have this interesting relationship where anytime Andrews wants him to do something, he almost blackmails him into it because to keep his past hidden. So you're dying to know what it is, and that makes you not really trust him that much, even though him and Ripley are so close, you're like, oh, something's not right here. And then when he actually tells you the backstory about accidentally giving someone the wrong medication and causing numerous deaths, you sympathise even more with him right before he's then taken from us. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
I totally agree, Ashley, that you picked up on that. And I think it's always important in a film, whatever the aesthetic, whatever the appeal, whatever the story is, there has to have a human heart. It has to, no matter how good it looks. And we've all seen films that haven't worked. You spent a lot of money on them, but you've not felt engaged or connected. It's not been relatable. And God love Ripley. What a time she's had. She went to her work one day and ended up, get all her pals got, wiped out by aliens and had all these horrendous things happening. It's kind of like a curse, which is part of the sort of the religious theme that goes through it. But what happened when the EEV crash landed on Fury 161, this remote bleak prison planet? And back to the assembly cut, Gary, there's another deleted scene, and it's part of just before the Ox pull the EEV out of the water, which I think they should have kept in. It's so powerful, and it goes back to having no technology, no weapons, etc. Is Clemens, the doctor, he finds her washed up on shore. So in the theatrical cut, she's inside the hypersleep, whatever it's called, sleep thingy. But in the assembly cut, she's covered in oil and debris from the crash. She's also covered in, this is pretty gross, lice and stuff and bugs, because the planet is infested. It's really the back end of the universe. And immediately you sense compassion in this guy. He's a big guy. He sees a woman who's so vulnerable. She's been in an accident, and he's a doctor, and instinctively he comforts her and he picks her up. So that bond starts. So although the theatrical release suggests something a bit more suspicious about him, this kind of lends itself to humanity. And interestingly, the character's name is Jonathan Clemens. And I want to talk later on about one of the original screenplays, which was about monks. And the main monk in it was called John. And he had a connection, this kind of spark with Ripley. So he's evolved from this character. Interestingly, Richard E. Grant read for the part. There's a clip of Richard E. Grant dressed as Clemens. But he's kind of, I don't know what the polite word is. He's a great actor, but he's kind of quirky. And he was quite young at the time. Whereas Charles Dance has the stature. He's a big guy. And what I really like about him is how gentle his voice is. And you'll know, Gary, from filmmaking, it's very different from theatricality, where you kind of ramp it up. Just got to dial it down, and just get the mic in closer, and just feel how people actually talk. And if you look at Charles Dance, he talks so quietly, but he's hiding something. He's hiding something because he doesn't want Ripley to dislike him. It's not because, we're led to believe he's got some really dodgy, but he made a mistake. He was overtired, he was overworked, he made a mistake, he paid for it, and in fact, he volunteered to stay on after that. So I strongly agree with Ash. I picked up that as well. Now, I think in a general terms, I think the characters are really strong in Alien 3. The dialogue is brilliant, and the acting is superb. Charles S. Dutton's another one, who's the sort of leader of the prisoners. But yeah, I strongly agree with that point you've picked up on, Ashley.
It just seems like the sort of first instance on that planet that there's been a real human connection. They all seem to be quite sterile, and yeah, they do have their jokes that they play on each other, and they call Aaron with the nickname of 85 with his IQ and stuff, and that's lovely. But I just feel like that connection was probably something that was missing from the whole planet, and it was just beautiful to see. So yeah, that was my very first point.
Yeah, I'm going to jump to my second point, and I'll come back to my first, because I could actually go either way with these, because what we spoke about ties in nicely. But my second point is, again, just on the characters as well, and the performances I think are great. Obviously, Sigourney Weaver just knocks it out of the park, but Charles S. Dutton, who plays Dylan, Charles Dance, obviously Clemens, and Brian Glover, who's Andrews, and nobody is phoning it in at all. They're all giving it their all, and we'll probably get into this anyway, but the amount of rewrites and problems on set and producers just getting in the way, I'm surprised none of these just were like, I'm just here for my wage and nothing else, And as I said earlier, with the other characters in it, they are more fleshed out as well, and it's just a pity they lost that in the theatrical cut. Like, they've all got their quirks, and they've got their pasts, and they've also got their personalities, They don't feel like they're just there to be killed off. They genuinely look petrified. Like, and as Gordon said, so I've got a wee note here. Like, Charles Dance's Clemens, he's just so bloody charming. Like, he's so lovely, and he's got a way with his words that honestly he could probably get me into bed the way he talks, you know. I know obviously there's been lots of changes with the script, but like nobody does anything that's silly or stupid just to move the plot along. Like, every move those characters make seem genuine to that character. Sorry, I'm rambling on here, but
No, go
I
for
also,
it.
just when we were talking about Ripley crashing on this prison planet that's got these men almost isolated from the rest of the world, it's this new temptation that is now there for them. It's good. That's another great thing, because she now doesn't just have to worry about the alien, it's these men as well. And I think someone says the line, nobody has seen a woman in years, these men are a threat. She almost needs to overcome their temptations before she can lead them to like salvation, for a better word, or lead them to their death, depending on how you look at it. And I've just got a monologue actually here that is by Dylan, and I think it's just a great quick monologue that he delivers when they're putting Hicks and Newt into the furnace, and it's cross-edited with either the dog, the chestburster and the dog, or the ox, but just the words of it is, why are the innocent punished? Why the sacrifice? Why the pain? Then he says, there aren't any promises, nothing certain, only that some get called, some get saved. She won't ever know the hardships and grief of those left behind. Now that bit's really great, because they've managed to, obviously Newt and Hicks have passed away, but they literally won't know the hardship and grief that's about to happen. We commit these bodies to the void with a glad heart, for within each seed there is a promise of a flower, and that cross-editing with this alien being born, but also, as we find out later, the seed in Ripley, because she's actually got one inside of her. Within each death, no matter how small, there's always a new life, a new beginning. Amen. And I just think it ties in a lot with the whole early drafts of it being quite a religious film as well. So I could go on about the performances and monologues, but that one monologue and the way obviously he performs it 100 times better than me reading it off of an iPad. But yeah, so
one of the best signs for me of a great performance is not noticing it. You know, I don't have any points down here about the acting, because it just wasn't something I focused on at all. So I totally agree with you.
That's so important. It's so subtle as well, that if you think of the best actors, you don't think of them acting, you think of them as a person. And that's where casting's so important, to cast the right person. I think they were right to put Charles Dance in that role rather than Richard E. Grant. And that's no disrespect to him whatsoever. It's just the right person for the right role. And if you consider Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter, it's instant. You don't have to pitch that, you don't have to push it. 30 years later, he's Hannibal Lecter, effortlessly so. And he's made some different choices through the films of the years. They're not all brilliant. And that comes down to casting. The casting was bang on. I agree with both of you about Dylan. He's got a charisma and he's got a strength. And my God, who's strong enough to take on these guys, the worst criminals in the worst place in the universe? And he's the boss. They're not going to mess them. So he's got that kind of quiet, dignified power over them. But he's also an honest man, and that comes through his speech. I thought that speech was beautifully done. It was beautifully made, and it comes back to my sort of my positives are kind of overall. There's a few nitpicky things overall, but if you look at the theme, if you look at the colors, and also the soundtrack, it's an epic soundtrack by Elliot Goldenthal before he went on to do all these other huge blockbusters. It all comes together beautifully, and that's a really well made scene. And I think a lot of the fans were so distracted by the biggest bugbear as a choice made at the very beginning of the film, that they were unforgiving for the rest of it. And actually, if you look at it objectively, it's beautifully made by, I think David Fincher was 25 or 26, and all he'd done was Madonna Vogue video and some adverts for Nike, and he worked with ILM. That was his first feature. So imagine having this sort of the vision to tie all these different elements together and portray something so beautifully. So, but I think, fighting the corner for Alien 3, these are great characters, these are great actors and great dialogue. And I think when you watch it with fresh eyes and forget about potential disappointments in the story, it's a far more enjoyable experience.
Just to recap on how they lost their audience before the film starts, is if you watch this straight off the back of Aliens, like the young girl in it, Newt, and Corporal Hicks are like two of the best characters ever written, and they worked so well with Ellen Ripley. And then people were excited when Alien 3 came out to go, where is this story going to go next with these three characters, and Bishop as well, I guess, the android. So these four characters.
3.5.
3.5, yeah. Where are they going to go with these characters? And then they didn't. They just killed them all off. So right away, killing off these lovable characters, they lost their audience right away. So then the rest of the film, they're basically trying to claw this audience back, and that's a really hard thing to do. So if you go in knowing these characters aren't going to exist in this film, I think you do see it with very, very different eyes.
Totally agree, Gary. And that's my, I'm not a negative person at all, and always look for something constructive to say. But I think that choice just was a bit of a disaster, being completely honest about it. Because if you look at Aliens, I watched the end of Aliens again, that Ripley has missed out on so much. She was in hypersleep for so long. She had a daughter, and you see a photo of her as an older woman in Aliens. And incidentally, that photo is Sigourney Weaver's mother. So there is a likeness there. And she bonds with Newt, and Newt's a survivor, just this badass kid who's in LV-426, this colonized planet, and she survives, and nobody else does. And she bonds with Ripley, and later on in Alien, she ends up in a nest in a hive, and Ripley rescues her. And then for what? To make that choice is to wipe her out straight away. And also Hicks. Hicks was a guy, a soldier who was dutiful. He was also a good guy. He was one of the good guys. And, they took him out as well, and they kind of splattered what was left of poor Bishop, who was actually a good synthetic person. So without banging on about it too much, I think certainly at the time, that was the biggest controversial point. In 92, why the hell did they kill off Newt and Hicks and just turn Bishop in a pile of rubbery stuff at the very beginning of the film? Because, Gary, I know you're a fan of The Walking Dead, and there's scope to, you'd never know when you're going to lose a main character, and that's exciting. And that just keeps you on edge. And throughout Alien 3, at any point, they could have lost Hicks or Newt or whatever, but they chose not to. And that choice, it comes from Vincent Ward's script from The Wooden Planet. But I think that's caused so many problems over the years, and that's kind of skewed people's perspective of it. So to watch it again, knowing that and putting it to the back burner, it's a great film. I really enjoy the film, but I think it could have been better if Newt went on.
Yeah, and also obviously they bring back Sigourney Weaver again for Alien Resurrection, and it's so easy to look back and say this is what I would have done, obviously, but what they could have done is kept Newt in it, let Sigourney Weaver out of the franchise after Alien 3, and then follow Newt growing up, and she becomes your new lead. But we could come up with all these ideas until we're exhausted. But
absolutely. So Gordon, do you want to take us to one of your first points?
Sure. So I agree with you guys. And this is the interesting about this film. It's so debatable. There's so much to chat about. But I enjoyed the production design. I enjoyed the huge sets that they built down in Pinewood. I enjoyed the costumes. I love the fact that Sigourney Weaver shaved her head. I thought that was really cool. And we have to think about the character Ripley through cinematic history as one of the few amazing leading female characters who's strong, who's smarter than everyone else. It's just a brilliantly written character with depth and as it should be. And for her to make that decision as well was really cool. It's just kind of not pandering to previous Hollywood stereotypes, just going with it, just a survivor. And who did they turn to when Andrews kind of disappeared up into the roof of the canteen? It was like, who's going to lead? And naturally, it's Ripley. She's a natural leader. So, but I think they looked really cool. And I love the costumes. I love those kind of parka jackets with a big hood, and the Weyland-Yutani patch was really cool. So I would say the production design and the look, and also within that sort of sphere, the camera angles are almost all on the ground, which is really unusual in a film. And if you watch the film again, it's almost all ceilings and looking at them up the way. And that's the sort of alien perspective. That's this new alien, which David Fincher wanted to be like a puma or a panther, kind of stealthily skulking around, rather than this big, tall, imposing creature was in the original. So I would say the overall aesthetic of the film, and of course, film is an aesthetic medium, and we want more than that. We always do. But I think visually it was a really powerful film. It's kind of dated in some of the effects and some of the frames. You can see a kind of black line around the sort of composite scenes, which is of the time. It was pre-CGI, or CGI was in its infancy. It was around at the same time as Terminator 2, which transformed everything. But you can forgive that with time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually goes on to my next point with the special effects that were used when Ripley reawakens Bishop, and he's kind of like, his face is kind of half there, there's white stuff pouring out the side, and he has the sort of digitized voice, melted face. I thought that the special effects there were so on point. They were absolutely brilliant, which it did, I mean, this is one of my nitpicks, but some of the other special effects, when you were seeing, I think it was kind of outside the planet, weren't of that standard, which I didn't understand, because when you saw Bishop and he was only like a head, his face was melting off, and it was so real the way they did it. It freaked me out a bit, actually. But I loved that, and I thought that was really, really well done in a way that I didn't expect when I'd seen some of the other effects. I mean, the effects of the aliens and the face huggers are fantastic. They're just brilliant. But some of the more outside panoramic effects didn't live up to that standard. So I was just really impressed by the melting Bishop.
Definitely. And this is why I'm so excited to hear your guys' perspective of this film, which is nearly 30 years old. And for you actually to notice how good the animatronics were at that time, because that's all we had in those days. And I would argue strongly that the best era for films is the 70s, because you were limited in your physical effects. It was the fear of the unknown and the unseen. If you think about Alien and even Jaws changed when you saw the big rubber shark coming out. Before that, it was fear of the unseen. And the original Alien was this thing just lurking. And a friend of mine, Andy Gurley, described it as an oil rig in space. That it was so terrifying to be trapped in this big industrial machine with the apex predator of all time in there with you, but you only saw little snippets of it. So I would argue that during the 90s, things changed. In 1992, I was in art college, and I did a dissertation on the makeup effects, because I used to want to be a special makeup effects artist. Is where I kind of got into acting eventually. And we were kind of worried that CGI was going to take over because of Terminator 2. But then when you see some of the effects that went on through the 90s and the 2000s, they're not that great. And you get the feeling that the director was excited by this new toy, and let's stick it in there, Star Wars, for example, and have these digital characters. But if you go back to the greatest characters in cinema, the greatest scares in cinema, it's what you can't see. So I think it was unfortunate time. It's during the transitional phase of the early 90s that Alien came out, and they actually made that alien out of puppets. So it wasn't CGI. It was done with blue screen and 4 or 5 puppet makers. It's on YouTube, they had a whippet, like a real dog, and they put an alien costume on it because it was so kind of sinewy and thin and kind of resembled, which I thought was really, really clever and innovative, And if you look at some of the early CGI through the 90s, it's so bad. So I think Alien was just unfortunate time. They used the technology they had at the time, but we can spot it a mile away now. So yeah, fair point.
Yeah, and it's how you use that technology as well. Like, because CGI is going to age. I mean, Stan Winston's effects, for instance, in Jurassic Park, is still great. And then when they had to use CGI, like when the T-Rex comes out of the paddock, it still looks great because Spielberg's decided to hide it in shadows and hide it in the rain. You keep it in darkness, so even if the CGI starts to look bad, you're blending it into these dark backgrounds. And just on Spielberg and on Jaws, I'm pretty sure the pitch for the original Alien was Jaws in space.
Just a wee anecdote, guys. Alien came out in 1979, and I was a 9-year-old kid in primary school. And every week I went round to I'm from Inverness, I went round to Greg Street Post Office, and I bought a comic called 2000 AD with Judge Dredd, and it was very Cold War, there's a nuclear threat, and there's a lot of post-apocalyptic stories coming out, and Mad Max emerged from that time. And I loved 2000 AD, still love it to this day. And on a top shelf, which was weird for a comic, was this Alien. I thought, what the heck is that? At age 9, so I took it down, opened it up, and it was the artwork of H.R. Giger. and it's beyond imagination, and it was absolutely terrifying. So I would think, you know, when things don't go quite right, which is Alien 3, when there's lots of tension between studios, there's rewrites, there's a lot of egos involved, people want the best thing, but there's too many cooks ultimately. I think with Ridley Scott back in the original Alien, who's a genius director, went on to do Blade Runner shortly after, he connected with H.R. Giger, and that's lightning in a bottle. That's what you cannot pre-plan everything in development, and they nailed it. So they created this character, and I can remember being absolutely horrified. And Alien was a horror film. It was not sci-fi, it wasn't action, none of these things, it was a horror. And we used to love, on TV, we only had 3 channels, and we used to get excited by trailers. And at the end, it was always a sort of deep voice, only one man could stop him. It was always like that. And at the end, the chilling thing was Certificate X. And you're just like, and you just wanted to see it. It was that kind of, you know, don't touch the red button, or wet paint don't touch, or if you've got a plaster in your finger, you're down to look underneath. It sparked something in you know, the human psyche. And I was fascinated from that time, obviously too young to see it. When Aliens came out in '86, I was a 16-year-old. It was an action blockbuster. It was a popcorn movie. Go with your pals, cheer, laugh, scream, cry, all the way through it. And it was a big entertainment. So I think all those things which were wonderful at the time, they also created anticipation and expectation for Alien 3. And I think that is, there's a lot of ingredients why something goes right, and a lot of it's just blind luck. And sometimes when things go wrong, there's too much expectation. And I think that's part of the issue sort of leading into Alien 3.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gary, do you want to go on to another point of yours?
Yeah, so that actually beautifully ties into my next point, which is just the whole feel of the film in regards to atmosphere, setting, and of course costume, which we've already kind of spoke about. I guess you need to think with each of the films in the franchise, how do you up the game? So as we said, the original Alien went straight for the fear factor, like Jaws in space. So then when James Cameron came in to do Aliens, he switched it and made it an all-out action film. And then Fincher obviously comes on board and then decides to switch back to horror, but that's not enough. So then he goes, I'm going to switch it back to horror, and I'm going to give them absolutely no technology and no weapons, and I'm also going to change the look of the alien as well. As we said, it was more like a dog or a panther. But I do like the post-apocalyptic vibe that's going on, you know, with the characters and like the goggles and the robes. It's like they almost look like really shitty Jedis, you know. But the fact that they are all dressed in greens with their shaved heads, it gives this it's almost like this small army of people that have banded together to get through this life. And I did love the whole prison vibe feel of it. I liked the idea of the planet was going to be monks. The planet was going to be wooden, and it was going to be like this monastery for monks. And I do like that, but I feel like the monks, if they're just this religious group, then you would just automatically think they're not going to survive against this alien. But the fact that you make it prisoners who have found religion, well, you know that they can almost take care of themselves to some form because they are crooks, they're criminals. And it's this kind of last of humanity type feel. I know a lot of people dislike that because you see the planet during the day, for instance, whereas in the original Alien and Aliens, everything was set at night. But what's the point of churning out films that are just going to be the same all the time? You know, it doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was on a huge scale. I know we've already touched on the sort of set and stuff. It was on a huge scale that made it feel daunting, but there was also so many twists and turns in the physical makeup of the prison that when the alien was on the loose and massive, there was that tension and you didn't know where it was coming from next. And I loved the holes in the roof where the alien just ended up swooping down and getting people. So yeah, there was that unknown, and the sort of big the fan as well that one of the inmates gets killed on. It's that there is a sense of it's not only the alien that can kill you, like this is a huge planet, it's infected with lice, it is disgusting, and there's so many other things out there plus this alien on top.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a time now just to sort of mention some of the the backstory of this particular film, just briefly, and jump in any time, guys. But again, just to reduce it to a word, I would say Alien, yes, is a horror. Aliens is action. And I would also agree Alien 3 has horror aspects, but I would say it's a tragedy. And there, look what happens, look at the story, but we're kind of drawn to that as well. Sometimes you just want a good greet, and it's just like, why would you watch a film like that? But it's part of the human spectrum of emotion, and that's okay to process things and to tell these stories and to deal with them. So although it's extremely bleak, I think it's a tragedy, and it doesn't try to be anything else. But I think, just briefly going to the backstory, immediately after Aliens, the producers Giler and Hill, they got hold of, I've got it here actually, it's William Gibson, who wrote the first script, and he took 2 years to write it. And it's what the fans wanted. They all survive, all the main characters survive. The Sulaco's picked up by a rescue ship. There's a lab on board who have an ulterior motive, and they're all about bioweapons. Weyland-Yutani are this overbearing company, and they're wanting to create these, clone the aliens and form these bioweapons. But that begs the question, who's the enemy? Because we're given this sort of just brief impression that Weyland-Yutani is this kind of American, European, Japanese global corporation, all powerful. So who are the actual enemy? So films always reflect the art of the time. And in the mid-80s, it was still during the Cold War. So it was commies in space. So the Soviet Union were the baddies. And in Gibson's script, without spoiling it at all, because it's worth reading, it's the United Progressive People's Front, this sort of extremist Marxist group they're the enemy. And that's who Weyland-Yutani want to get the upper hand on, because they've got big space guns and stuff. But if they've got the xenomorph, the apex predator, then they can unleash that on them. And it's a kind of story around that. One of the bold decisions they made in that script, and again, it's not a spoiler at all, is Ripley doesn't wake up in the hypersleep. She's in a coma throughout the whole thing. And that's when I agree with the studios, because people always think studios are always made out to be the bad guys. I agree with them. It's like, why take the greatest character, this amazing woman, why take her out? Hicks had a great role, Newt had a role, Bishop got new legs, was able to walk about again, but they took Ripley out of it. And so the studio went, no, we can't do it. So they went back and forward. Rennie Harlan came on board, who was a big action director. They looked at, he wanted to do a humans versus aliens on the alien planet or on Earth. And they didn't go for that either. So he left the project. And then they made a gamble. They went to Vincent Ward, who's a kind of more artistic director. And he came out with this thing completely out the blue, that the Sulaco crash landed in a lake on this, it's essentially a wooden satellite. It's not really a planet, planetoid, 5 miles in diameter, and it crashed in a lake on it. And the monks were there, and they were very religious, and all these themes have been echoed into the final production. But they landed, and there was no technology because they rejected technology. So Ripley was there, and it was Vincent Ward that decided to wipe out the crew, and they carried that on. So there's no real reason for it other than it was in the original script. However, I mentioned earlier that the main monk was called John, who became the Clemens character. There was the abbot, who was a bit dodgy, and he had ulterior motive, and he was the Andrews character, and they all evolved. They had no weapons, they had pitchforks, because they had sheep and they had farms in this wooden planet. But what a wonderful visual image. And there's some drawings online of all the layers, and the big fan in Alien 3, which young Christopher has an unpleasant end with. There's kind of windmills and stuff inside to keep the air moving around. So all these things were echoed. But at some point, and I think Gary made a really good point there, is monks are an easy target. They're pacifists. They're living out in this world. They've rejected Earth, and there's no real, the alien's going to win, quite simply. Whereas the prisoners are pretty hard. A lot of these guys, Dylan, all these guys, they can fight their corner. They can, so I think that gives it a bit more of a sort of even keel. But I would also say at the time, all these films reflect the time, and there's computer virus was a big worry around about 1990. We thought computer virus was going to wipe out all technology in the world in 1990, and also greenhouse gases. So there was fires on the wooden planet that were blocking their little artificial atmosphere, and that was reflective of the time. So all these things were kind of echoing, and they may seem irrelevant now, but that evolved into Alien 3. And when you read the script, and I would recommend reading the script, it's free online, you can download it. I think it's genius, it's brilliant, because as Gary said, they could have done the same again, but they went way off on a tangent. And again, the studio were like, whoa, come back here. So as much as the studio gets a hard time, and it's not perfect, the final film, let's look at the journey of it. And I think they did pretty well considering, but the one thing we'd probably all agree on is wiping out the main characters before the opening scene.
Yeah. Yeah, there was two things on that. I wonder if what you were saying there about the bioweapons, obviously that's a running theme through the Alien franchise, but I wonder if that's why they lean more heavily on that in Alien Resurrection. I wonder if they're almost paying homage to that original script. And it's funny about you saying about Ellen Ripley being in a coma in one of those original drafts, because that was kind of one of the problems, wasn't it, with The Last Jedi, with Princess Leia, or General Leia, I guess, in that one, where she goes into a coma, but then again they bring her back towards the end, and maybe they could have done something like that, where it's all about protecting Sigourney Weaver's character for maybe half of the film, and then she wakes up and then comes back and kicks ass. That could have been a way of doing it as well, I guess.
Yeah.
It's really interesting hearing about the original draft with the monks and the wooden and the fires and stuff, and how they have actually implemented all of that. I had no idea about that, but now I really want to read more about that version of the script, because it's just, when you see where these ideas have come from and how they've evolved, actually the perspective on the film is totally different. So now we're only halfway through the podcast, and I usually always say at the end, oh, I need to go back and watch that film again. But now I need to go back and watch that film, 100%. So Gordon, do you want to go on to another one of your points for us?
Sure, just briefly on the Vincent Ward point, I want to give a big up to some amazing people in Glasgow.
Yes.
So last year, there's a guy, I've written a couple of wee notes here. Alien 3, the unfilmed script, was adapted into a theatrical production in Glasgow by Stevie Douglas, who runs Scare Scotland, in a collaboration with Shows on a Shoestring, and it was shown at the Webster Theatre, and it was based on the original Vincent Ward script with the monks. And I thought, how amazing, and Glasgow, centre of the world for this, because it's got global interest. I didn't get a chance to speak to Stevie, but I spoke to one of my pals, Rebecca Turner, and she played one of the monks, and she brought sort of a physicality of theatre. She studied sort of Japanese movement. And the main character, John, who went on to be Clemens, was Michael J. Warren, who's a Strike Fight Co. in Glasgow. He does worked with him in a few things as well. So I remember hearing some buzz at the time. I don't know if you heard about it, Gary, at the time, but I knew it was on, but I never actually saw it. What they did, because they couldn't obviously build a wooden planet, what they did was they had a narrator. And I love the term they used. They were the storytellers. So there was somebody dressed as a monk in the corner who described the wooden layers, described the fields and the sheep and all this sort of stuff, and the cathedral and the libraries and all these things. And then they played it on stage, but they had an amazing alien costume, and they used the theatre and the wings and the lighting. Like when you saw this familiar sort of shaped head and the mouth coming out, which was absolutely terrifying. And it got a 4-star review, and it was so well done. And it'd be lovely to see that back. But I just think that we live in a time where we have to be more innovative, we have to be more resourceful, and problem solving is always part of the creative process. And I thought I just want to give a big up to these guys in Glasgow, Scare Scotland, Steve Douglas, and all the crew who put the Vincent Ward script into a play in the best city in Scotland last year. So just a wee big up for these guys.
Absolutely, I'll have to check that out. That sounds amazing, and just what a way to bring that script to life. It was created, and it's a great sort of insight, and obviously they have used parts in the film, so why not bring this to life? And I think that's amazing. I'd love to see that done.
Yeah, I actually got to see an early showing of it. They put it on, I think it was almost like a test run the year before, and it was in the Flying Duck pub in Glasgow. They've got a wee function suite round, and honestly, it's tiny wee stage, but they still put on this small stage, they put on this full performance of a wooden planet. And yeah, I know Stevie Douglas really well, and he's got a great team of people that he works with. Scare Scotland are fantastic with what they do. Yeah, check out Scare Scotland in Glasgow.
Amazing. So yeah, Gordon, you can go on to your next Alien 3 point.
I think I love what they did with the actual alien creature itself. If this is the apex predator, it has to adapt and evolve to survive the most hostile environments and just keep going. So from being a sort of 8 foot tall, big scary guy in a rubber suit with pipes coming out his back. It evolved to be four-legged, like either the ox or the Rottweiler, whichever version you watch. It's the same chest burster that comes out, and I think it's brilliant. I think that's where special effects really works, and you see it more in the ox scene, where the little kind of baby alien comes out. The puppetry works. It's seamless.
Yeah, absolutely. And for my last point, I thought, we have sort of touched on this, but I thought for the third film in a franchise, I know I hadn't seen the first two, but I'd watched the spoiler videos. I think setting it in that prison environment was a great move. The prison setting, already, the audience are not going to trust all the guys that are in this prison. Why are they here? Why are they sort of quarantined on a totally different planet? Like, what have they done that's so bad? That sort of dynamic amongst the inmates and amongst anyone else coming onto this planet was a really, really good direction to go, that maybe, I don't know if you guys would have expected it to go in that direction, or after seeing Alien and Aliens.
I watched it probably when I was a lot younger than what I should have been when I watched it. You know, I think I watched this film when I was like 10 or something like that. And yeah, I loved it. I loved the whole look of the alien creature, as Gordon said, the prison idea. It's holding the worst of the worst in regards to prisoners, but yet there's no weapons to keep them at bay, so to speak. And I think, is it Andrews, it says that it's built on trust. As I said earlier, Ripley is this temptation, and they're going to have to get past that, and there's going to be that element of trust to get through this, you know.
Well, I think what the fans wanted, and I class myself in that, is I wanted aliens on Earth. I think that's what we wanted to see, and we wanted Newt to grow up and be a warrior, and you know, because as time goes by, we thought that would be a natural evolution and really powerful, and be a new character, kind of like Furiosa in Mad Max, who has strong echoes of Ripley when you see, even with the shaved head. You know, Ripley is the OG, but Furiosa is incredible, and they're making a new movie about that, about Furiosa as a younger character. But I think we want to see it on Earth, and some of the stories that didn't quite make it to screenplay, one of them was Alien Takes New York, a big alien, and it had a bit of a Godzilla vibe, and that's kind of, I'm glad they didn't go with that, because it's been done, and it's going to be a box office success. People go along, they might not go and see it again, but it's going to make a lot of money. But there's something about this predator coming, this beast, dragon, whatever you want to call it, devil coming to Earth, which could be terrifying, and that's where we thought it was going to go, because we all loved all the guns and stuff in Aliens. We loved the direction it was going, so it was shocking. But I'm glad they did what they did. Honestly, I think it's a bold decision, and I'm glad they went for horror, action, tragedy, because the other side of it is that the actor Sigourney Weaver didn't particularly want to do it again. And why should she? She was a successful actor. She's worked on Broadway. She's multi-talented, diverse roles that she plays. Didn't necessarily just want to play this one, albeit iconic character. So they had to get her on board. She loved the sort of, you know, she loved working with David Fincher. She enjoyed that. She loved getting her head shaved. You know, she was, because that was bold to do. Because he suggested, that was his first suggestion when he met her. She went, yeah, let's do it. She wanted to push things a bit more.
Yeah. So I'll go quickly on to, is it me? No, is it you?
Yeah, no,
is it me?
you.
Yeah. My third point is actually just on the creature, and as we already spoke about, the slightly altered look of the creature worked really well. The CGI is now piss poor, there's no other way to say it. But on the other hand, when it was going to those close-ups of the creature, the animatronics, as it snarls, and when the small mouth comes out the big mouth, and it hits the victim and the skulls, and the gore just goes everywhere. It's great, and I feel like that's one thing that Fincher did, was he really upped the gore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay, so Gordon, do you have any nitpicks for the film? Any things that you didn't like?
We've mentioned some of the inconsistent alien effects as well. That sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's got a black line around it, and it blows it. There's a lovely moment where Ripley's pinned against the wall in the sort of clinic area, the medic area, and the alien comes right up to her its profile to her side, which is iconic, and you don't know why it doesn't attack her. That emerges later in the film. That's a little clue.
Can I actually just say something on that as well? That was another thing that Alien 3 brought to it, was that Ellen Ripley is no longer going to get attacked by this creature. So it's almost like she can now hunt it. In Aliens, and I guess even Alien Resurrection, it's her getting chased again, but now she can go and look for this creature in Alien 3, knowing that it's not going to attack her, and that is something that works really well. Sorry.
It is, and you know, you mentioned sort of the gore, which is pretty graphic, but it's not too gratuitous. But I mean, it's a pretty gruesome thing, that this monster. But the first cut that was shown, it was a 3-hour cut that Fincher showed the executives and the crew, and some people walked out, not because they were bored by it, because it was so horrifying and so gory and so graphic. Again, studios, sometimes it's a tough job, because you how realistic do you want to make it, and how much you want to scare the audience, and how much you want to traumatize the audience. So it's just it's difficult. So I totally salute David Fincher for being a brilliant visionary, for being a 25-year-old and creating that. It's absolutely stunning. It's incredible. But at the same time, if that's to go in general release to be seen by a lot of people, decisions have to be made. You know, I think things are different now. You know, different cuts could come out, but if that's going on the big screen, it's a business as well. They need to get people in to see it. They felt very strongly the film would have done better in Europe, because arty films do better across here. And the US, there has to be, you know, a lot of, you know, blockbusters are an American phenomenon, and you know, a lot of people go and see them.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you, Gordon. I think probably one of the main reasons why I didn't particularly enjoy the film was because I felt like it didn't go in. I said this with Get Out as well. I felt like it didn't go in deep enough, and a lot of the prisoners, I wanted to know more about their story. And obviously, I've not watched the first two, so that I'm at a disadvantage with the note in the background anyway. But I wanted more of those scenes with Ripley and Clemens, like those beautiful relationship scenes. I did want more of that. And then when the alien came, I found it all a bit sort of jumping about the place a lot. Obviously the alien is kind of jumping about the place, so that's the point. But I just felt like I didn't know where to direct my attention in those bits, so I kind of needed fed a little bit more as an audience member. But then possibly watching the first two films, I would get into that more. So that's something on my part that I would definitely watch the the previous films before now. Yeah.
It's really funny you say that, because it's got me thinking as well, where everybody hated the film because they killed off Hicks. You couldn't get this beautiful relationship with Clemens if Hicks was there, because he was kind of not the boyfriend, but like, you know, the hero, the hunk, and the two of them worked together to kick ass in number two. So that was going to be a relationship that was going to be built on, like, that's what the foundations of that relationship were built on, what they went through in Aliens. Clemens would have just been pushed to the side. So when that scene comes where he's killed, it wouldn't have been as impactful. I would still have preferred Hicks to be in there, but you're right, you wouldn't have that scene. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually forgot to mention one point which I really did like, and it's literally a single line, and it's right at the start when Ripley has just sort of come round, and Andrews says to her about being amongst all the prisoners, they don't want ripples in the water. And I thought that was such a clever line, obviously because her name's Ripley. But I just thought that was a really well done line, and I would have loved to see more of that as well. Yeah.
Just very, very briefly, the very, very start, when the 20th Century Fox iconic image comes up, and there's the famous 20th Century Fox fanfare, and it stops halfway through. I don't know, you need to watch it again to see that. And it's chilling. It's absolutely chilling. I can remember, if you think of a film you've looked forward to for years, and you're sitting in the cinema, if it's Star Wars, whatever it is, and you're like that, and you see Lucasfilm coming or whatever, you get goosebumps. Well, 20th Century Fox fanfare starts, and halfway through, they destroy it, and they put in Elliot Goldenthal's depressing, bleak music, and it just sets the tone. And I can remember watching thinking, oh my, I loved it. I love little sort of things like that. So the ripples in the water, the 20th Century Fox fanfare being interrupted to change the tone and set the scene of the film. These are really powerful things. And I think to be fair to Alien 3, it requires more analysis and more dissection, and people not necessarily are willing to give that. But I think we've discovered today that when you start to break it down, think, actually, what was all the controversy about? We know that, you know, the main story choices that were made. But actually, when you break it down, there's really powerful scenes. There's great acting. It looks great. So why does it get that score in Rotten Tomatoes? And I suggest that people going back to see it again would see it in a different light and think, actually, do you know what? It's actually a pretty good film.
Well, hopefully after this podcast, to see it in a different light, Also, I just had a few other quick notes here. Yeah, I just wonder what you think of this. So, in the original Alien, you find out that it's attacking the crew members, but in the director's cut of that as well, you find out that it's putting them into like the nest. And then Aliens, you find out there's the queen alien, it's like the queen bee, and that's the reason they're kidnapping the victims. And but what is the point of the alien in Alien 3?
You're right, Guy, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually reminded me with something I haven't thought about for 28 years. That was the other huge reaction from the fans. That the first one is this kind of fear of the unknown. The second one is the queen and the hive and everything else. It's almost like ants or termites in space that are pretty much indestructible. And the third one is just one alien, and it just kills people. Is that it? So that's a really good point, and that was strongly argued when we were in art college way back in the early 90s. People were really annoyed at that. It's like, yes, okay, that you made it evolve physically, but is that it? And the Jaws in space thing works the first time round, but if it's just an individual creature, it just kills people. Is that it? So that's a really good point. I think I actually hadn't thought about that for years. And that I can remember looking back, there's a lot of heated debates like Star Wars now with my pals. Is that it? Is that what you're going to do with what Giger created, this biomechanical, organic, hideous devil of a creature, and it just goes out and kills people? So yeah, I think that's important. That's brought up as well, because I guess there's some nostalgia that I'm fond of the film, but that at the time was a strong point to criticise it, and rightly so.
Yeah, and another big part that's criticised is the main hallway chase scene where they're closing all the hatch doors to try and block it in. And a lot of people hate that because they can't quite work out what's going on. The fact that you don't quite know what's going on and where the creature is and who's closing what door, that's how they would feel trying to block that in. So it's giving you that same confused feeling. So I actually love it, and I do love the POV shots, the shots that are like the point of view of the alien, and it's kind of like Jaws under the water, isn't it? Like less is more, and just the speed that camera goes down those hallways is phenomenal.
It is, and that's, I think it was kind of done, but I was watching the making of, and I think if we're all honest, we'd like to think we're the action hero, but I think if a real alien came, we'd be like, we'd be running like hell. Of course you would. That's an instinctive reaction, and that's what the prisoners were doing. But the shots going through were done with a Steadicam, and I was watching a making of thing, and the original cinematographer was unwell and had to leave the project. They brought someone new in, and somebody spun the Steadicam, and they looked at it, and it was by accident they discovered that it looks like the alien is running along the ceiling, which was much more powerful than the actual dodgy special effects. When you spin that Steadicam, and then I thought it was a really good scene. So I agree with you. I can see why some people wouldn't like it, but I thought it was really powerful.
This is actually more of a nitpick for the franchise in general, but the chestbuster, when the facehugger lays the embryo, the egg, the time between that happening and the chestbuster busting out, it changes in like every film and in every death, and it actually reminds me of like in The Walking Dead. Actually, I know we mentioned that earlier, where like when someone gets bitten, like it always changes how long it takes for them to actually turn into a zombie, and it's kind of the same thing here. It's like how long the story needs will be how long it is. So
yeah, no, consistency is like what we love. You
Mhm.
you want to know that if that chestbuster or if the embryo is laying in one of the characters, they've only got 10 minutes to go or something, or they've got an hour to go, so you know that. And then if something changes, that makes it interesting in a different way as well.
Yeah, you're right. If we knew exactly how long it takes, if they told us, like in one of the previous films, it takes 6 hours, right? Then that's like basically putting a ticking time bomb on your screen. Are they going to get the job done in those 6 hours?
Absolutely. Gordon, anything else on the film from yourself?
Not really, but I think a sort of general point was, this film 28 years later, look how much conversation it can generate. So it's I think it's got to be frustrating for filmmakers when somebody goes, "Oh, that was rubbish," and maybe it was, but I don't think we could reduce Alien 3 to that. That some people might have reduced it to that one word. I think it's not. I think it's flawed, I think there's lots of great stuff in there, but the very fact that we can chat about it, you know, nearly 30 years later means there's a lot of good in it, and there's a lot of brilliant filmmaking, really brilliant filmmaking. If you look what David Fincher's gone on to do with Seven and Fight Club and Social Network and everything, he's one of the top filmmakers in the world. So they got the right guy. It was just that the alignments didn't come quite, you know, the stars weren't quite aligned for that particular project at that particular time. But yeah, just in general, it's a very interesting film, and I would urge people to go and see it and make up their own mind.
Yeah. Just quickly, Gordon, just off the top of your head, what would you give out of 10 for Alien?
10.
Aliens?
10.
Alien Resurrection?
Top of my head, 4.
What? Prometheus?
Oh, the single most disappointed I have ever been in a cinema. However, I've watched it since, because that was 30 years of hype, loving the whole, you know, what's this horseshoe spaceship, the space jockeys, what's the origin, and I was crushingly disappointed with Prometheus. I've watched it since, but I'm going to go 5 out of 10 for Prometheus.
Okay, and Alien Covenant?
6.
Yeah, I agree with I agree with most of them, and maybe another day I'll ask you about Alien versus Predator.
Is there a minus?
So that moves quite nicely on to our final ratings for Alien 3. Have they changed? Have they stayed the same, Gary?
I've watched this so many times, and I'm going to stick with my 7.9.
Again, 7 first time round, 8 this time round, and I know watching it in 20 years' time, you'll probably enjoy it more. You'll probably enjoy it even more. Yeah.
For me, I'm going to keep my rating the same as 5 out of 10, but after our conversation, watching it again, I know it will be different. I know I will be picking up on different things, so I'm really excited to do that. Yes. Good. So just now we will take a short break, and we will be back with you for our quickfire questions round and some fun facts and fun short films to watch.
She won't ever know the hardship and grief for those of us left behind. We commit these bodies to the void with a glad heart. For within each seed, there is a promise of a flower. And within each death, no matter how small, there's always a new life. A new beginning. Amen.
Here we go. So we are back with our quickfire questions round. So Gary and I have 5 questions each for you, Gordon. These are no reflection of your knowledge on the film because they will be quickfire, so just give us whatever comes out. So, what is the dog called at the start of the film?
Spike.
Yes.
How many prisoners were there at the facility?
12.
What? 25.
Why doesn't the alien kill Ripley?
Because she's got a little baby queen alien inside her.
What is used to cremate Hicks and Newt's body?
I don't know what it's called. The really big hot thing. What's for molten lead or smelting or something like that?
Yeah. I'll give you the point. I just called it the furnace.
Yes.
What is Ripley's first name?
Ellen.
What company owns the factory?
Wayland Yutani. Boo!
Yes.
Yes. Why is Ripley told to shave her head?
Because there's lots of non-paying guests in the prison, little creepy crawlies, bugs and yucky things, so there's an infestation, yeah.
Great. And who lets the alien out of the blast doors?
Maybe Golic, the crazy one.
Yes.
My final question, what does Clements say Newt's cause of death is?
It's a pathogen, it's a disease. Cholera? Oh, no. She drowned in the cryotube.
Yes!
My last one is, what is the nickname given to Aaron based on his IQ?
It's absolutely brilliant, isn't it? And I love how it goes through the film, and it's 85, and we've got no idea what it is until it comes out, and it makes sense. Again, brilliant writing in Alien 3. Yeah, IQ.
Yeah. Well done, yes.
Yes, well done. Okay, so to round off the show, we each obviously tell our little interesting fact of the day. So my interesting fact of the day is such a cute one that I found. A baby puffin is called a puffling. I honestly thought that was adorable. And puffin parents actually carry 10 fish around in their mouth at any one time to feed their little pufflings, but the record is 62 fish in a puffin's mouth. I don't know how they found that out, but I just thought it was adorable.
That's quite cool, yeah, that is. I wonder how they managed to get 66 fish or 62 fish
62.
in without dropping one out. You know?
It's that marshmallow game, isn't it?
Yeah. So my fact is, the oldest unopened bottle of wine was found in a Roman tomb that's over 1,600 years old.
Wow.
It's sealed with a thick stopper of wax and olive oil. And whatever alcohol was in there is probably long gone now. And the last wee fact on that is, only one man will handle the bottle, simply because everyone else is just too afraid.
Fair enough. Gordon, do you have a fun fact for us?
I do, and I'm with you on this, Ashley. I think we've talked about, so many yucky things and scary monsters and stuff. I'm going with cute. So we've got two house bunnies called Misty and Monty, and when I was a kid, we kept bunnies outside in hutches, and you kind of pushed grass through the chicken wire, and somebody realised how intelligent they are, and they're beautiful animals. So these gorgeous little fluff balls hopping about all the time. But I discovered today there's something called a binky, and it describes, because bunnies obviously they can't talk, but they don't make any sound at all, the poor wee things, right? Seem they're really happy. They do a jump and they shake their head and their ears. And my bunnies do it all the time, or our bunnies do it all the time, and it's called a binky. That's a bunny binky. That's your fact of the day.
I want a bunny just so I can see it do a binky. So now, just to also go into promoting some other people's work that we are loving at the moment, we're going to share some short films that we love. So mine is one that I've watched a few times, and it's a really hard hitting short film. It's very short. It's under 4 minutes long. It's called Mind Yourself, and it's directed and written by Bonnie McRae. It's beautiful writing, and it deals with the suicide rates in Dundee, and specifically men's mental health. It's a really powerful, important film, and I would urge anyone to watch this. It's on her website, and I think it's also on YouTube. Yes, it's on YouTube. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well.
So my short film, I went with an animation this episode. I actually first seen it as it screened at the HB Film Festival last year. So Gordon, you might have actually seen it as well, because I know you were there. So it's called The Curious Child, and it's a really beautiful animation with a lovely voiceover, and it's by, I'm probably going to mispronounce this surname, Howard Voss Films.
Nice. Gordon, have you got a short film you'd like to share?
I have, guys. I apologise, and this is going to sound like shameless self-promotion, but hey, that's what actors do. There's a reason for it. There is a reason. There's a film called Writer's Block, short film, and it's only just been available in the last week on YouTube, so it's the only reason I'm bringing it up. And it's written and directed by Callum Shields. It's a beautiful story. Dee McGloin is cinematographer, and it's very Scottish, and it's gorgeous music. I happen to be in it as a dad, but honestly, it's lovely to see it. I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of Scottish filmmakers getting together and just making stuff happen. And I would just say a wee bit more on that, just very briefly, that as creative people, we all thrive in the realm of the imagination. That a film set is that realm. You step into that realm, and it's a place of trust. It's a place where you will get through anything. And it's just, when I saw the film for the first time, it's now on YouTube, it just reminded me of stepping that realm. And I think we need that realm more than anything these days, more than ever before. And let's just keep going. Let's keep pushing on. So it's Writer's Block - short film on YouTube.
Yeah, and I've actually seen this film already, and I can recommend it. It's a lovely wee film. And also, Dee, the cinematographer, she's up and coming as well, and we should also just be supporting female filmmakers as well. So it's great to see her thriving.
Absolutely, I can't wait to check that out. Thank you for sharing that, Gordon. And thank you so much for coming on our podcast. It's been great to hear your insight and to chat with you. I feel like we could have gone on way longer and just spoken so much about a film that I thought I would have not much to say about. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you and your work?
So I have an Instagram called Scotch Street Style, which has been running for a few years now, and I've been shining the spotlight on the best of Scottish creativity for some time. Initially sort of fashion, textiles, and I've held events in New York, Los Angeles, Berlin. And now, as I've evolved, now I'm sort of focused on acting. It's more about sort of the filmmaking community. So join in, and you can see what we're up to. And I'm very keen to promote what's happening and get people working together more now than ever. So yes, Scotch Street Style. And there's a few projects been involved in recently that really excited to share with you guys.
Yeah, and we would quite like to thank you as well, because we've seen a lot of activity from your Twitter feed and stuff with sharing the podcast. So thanks for that as well.
Of course, thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm Ashley Sutherland. You can find me at Ashley Sutherland on Instagram or at AshSutherland4 on Twitter.
And I'm Gary Hewitt, and my handle is HewittGPro, and that's across the board: Instagram, Twitter, etc.
And of course, you can keep up to date with the Choose Film Podcast on Instagram at Choose Film Podcast, on Twitter at Film Choose, and please do email us your thoughts, reviews, any films you want us to have a look at choosefilmpodcast@hotmail.com. Thank you so much. You've been listening to Choose Film, a real retrospective podcast, and join us next time with guest host Jennifer Mackey, who has chosen the film Jaws for us to look at. So I'm very excited to look into that. And we actually spoke a little bit about Jaws today, so this is going to segue very nicely. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye. Bye.